Hi, my name is Shumon Basar. I am an author, editor, curator, and for over a decade now, a friend and collaborator of Douglas Coupland's. When I was first approached by Mary to be part of this conference, I hesitated. When you've known someone closely for 15 years, as I have with Douglas, and you've traveled extensively with them, and also shared countless McDonald's takeouts, it means that your relationship with them has become very different to what it was at the start. The real start for me was 1997, when my flatmate at the time gave me a birthday present. It was Doug's then new novel, Girlfriend in a Coma. I loved it. I loved the way sci-fi strangeness and everydayness wove together. It felt as generous as a forest that's been there thousands of years, filled with secrets about all of us. From there, I made my way back to Generation X, Polaroids from the Dead, and other totems from Doug's back catalogue. Then, in 2007, with my friend Charlie Koolhaas, I flew from Hong Kong to Vancouver, where we gathered with the architectural historian Stephen Truby, and Charlie's mother, the artist Madelon Vriesendorp, in Doug's magical mid-century house. We were there to conduct an interview between Doug and Madelon for an exhibition and book that Stefan and I were putting together. In those few sun-rich days, this literary icon, Douglas Coupland, fleshed into palpably real person, and the four of us left Vancouver, changed by our time together. 2 years later, in London, I convened a dinner between Doug and Hans Ulrich, the world's most tireless art curator and interviewer. In a sense, this trialogue between us has never stopped since then. In our collaborative work together, Doug, Hans Ulrich, and I endeavour to give names to procelerated change in the present moment. What's proceleration, you might ask? Well, it's the acceleration of acceleration. Change has been changing faster than our ability to understand or acknowledge those changes. While time also accelerates, feels more hurried and less abundant, the present is stretched out. There's the recent present, the extreme present, and the near present. It means that the present is a field of study that requires historical, anthropological, and magical thinking. The three of us cohere around these conquests to compute the present moment in all its flux and mutability. The sum of these changes is something I call change vertigo. That unsettling sense of drag where the future arrives at a faster pace than our psychological, emotional, and political capabilities can cope with. It's worth mentioning here that Doug's debut novel, Generation X, had a subtitle, Tales from an Accelerated Culture. Even then, at the tail end of the 1980s and the start of the 1990s, years before most people on Earth would hear the word internet for the first time, Doug sensed history was accelerating. The Soviet Union was nearly over, capitalism was financializing, fast food was getting faster, which made McJobs even crummier. But in the wake of that acceleration, a generation came into adulthood that belonged neither to their parents' boomer past nor to a better future on the horizon of the year 2000. In a sense, Andy, Dag, and Claire were Generation X's representatives of pre-internet change vertigo. In 1991, a few months after Generation X had been released, Doug told the Boston Globe, quote, I just want to show society what people born after 1960 think about things, end quote. Born in 1961, Doug would turn 30 years old a month after this interview was published. Fast forward, and in 2015, Doug, Hans Ulrich, and the graphic designer Wayne Daly and I assembled a book called The Age of Earthquakes. We sourced images from 35 visual artists and photographers, as well as a miscellaneous set of imagery from the internet that we called screen matter. Our mission was to update Marshall McLuhan, Quentin Fiore, and Jerome Agel's The Medium is the Massage from 1967 to the internet immersive 2010s. In particular, we were interested in how the atomization of time into smaller and smaller micro units, for example, the 2-second refresh when you drag your thumb from the top of your phone screen in a social media app, how this creates the extreme present. Existence increasingly occurs in this heightened state of suspension between a past that you automatically upload to the cloud and a future that is already happening right now. So what is the extreme present? Well, it's the realization that the causes of the modern condition are not going away. The forces driving the current world will only accelerate. We also wrote that the 89-plus generation, born after the Berlin Wall came down and the Tiananmen Square protests erupted, have grown up entirely in a world of failing economics and politics. They sentimentalize nothing. In this sense, the Age of Earthquakes is a guide to the world inherited by Generation Y, at the same age that Doug was when he wrote Generation X. Since 2017, the four of us have been developing a touring exhibition and a graphic novel about another new term, which we call the extreme self. On the back of the book it says, if you're wondering why the inside of your head feels so strange these days, this book has the answer. We have sourced over 70 portraits and self-portraits from this amazing group of visual contributors who straddle different time zones and continents, as well as generations from the very young to the extremely established. So, what is the extreme self? Well, it tracks the mutation of personhood inside the extreme present. These mutations are a feature of emotional capitalism, where each person plugged into the global communication media network has become a precious resource. Each of us is calibrated to produce statistics with likes and views, etc. Everyday life is now an arena where the individual creates, shares, monitors, and reinforces stats at an incomprehensible scale, speed, and impact. Here's how the new book starts. The 20th century was about what belongs to who. The 21st century is about who belongs to what. For thousands of years, Earth's resources have been extracted by bodies, most of whom were not free. But now it's our bodies and ourselves being extracted, and mostly we offer it up for free. What is the opposite of you? Me? A crowd? A machine? A virus? Some as yet unnamed entity? The opposite of the self is no longer the crowd. The opposite of man is no longer nature. It's all happening faster than we thought. What if we need a new word to describe this thing that individuality is morphing into? You're now becoming your extreme self, and it's happening to you as you read these words. The age of you is the new age of extremes. The Museum of Contemporary Art in Toronto initiated this project by inviting us to create a new exhibition. We called it Age of You. From September 2019 to January 2020, visitors were able to walk through a preview of our book. In addition to the pages from the book, we organized a dozen installations which addressed the extreme self. I don't have time to go through all of these in detail, but they included, for example, Sophia Almeria, Satoshi Fujiwara, and Yuri Patterson. Age of You is currently on show at the Jameel Art Center in Dubai. Here are some pictures from the install. Since the extreme self is about how our interior worlds shape the exterior world, the fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic can also be understood through this prism. We find ourselves at a unique point of historical mutation, driven by the confluence of a biological virus and advanced social media. Recently, babies born during the pandemic have been coined Generation C for Generation Corona or COVID, or more ominously, Generation O, where O is for Omega, as in the last generation to survive before total climate collapse. But what is a generation today? Can a generation still be bookended by dates on a timeline, or is a generation more amorphously defined by its relationship with technologies and media incarnations? And why is there no equivalent to the derogatory diss, "OK Boomer," aimed at Gen Xers from Gen Y and Gen Z? So this has been a brief tour about how both of our concepts, the extreme present and the extreme self, can be traced back to Doug's Generation X. Why? Because that book assiduously described the link between shifts in history with new structures of feeling, and the necessity
for new words to describe those new feelings. As Doug explained midway through 2020, quote, "The sequence is that technology changes the person, and then those changed persons collectively, consciously, or unconsciously create philosophy." End quote. Thanks for listening, and see you at the conversation I'll be having with Victoria Camblin. Bye for now.